the heart of a sun-warmed garden, the black ant colony awakens to a gentle symphony of rustling leaves and dripping dew. Commander Antares stands atop the acorn shell watchtower, arms crossed heroically, as worker ants march below in perfect formation, waving tiny banners made from flower petals. Children ants play tag on rope bridges, while elders sip nectar from thimble cups. For a brief moment, the world feels safe, ordered, proud and peaceful, like a miniature kingdom untouched by the sky above. Pip the forager struts proudly through the clover jungle, hugging a giant breadcrumb like it's a royal treasure. "Behold," he shouts, puffing out his chest, "tonight the nursery feasts." The other ants clap and whistle, some pretending to faint from admiration. Pip dramatically points to the sky and declares himself the greatest forager in the western grasslands, slipping comically on a dewdrop and landing face first into a daisy. Laughter ripples through the ranks, and even the stern sentries crack a smile. Commander Antares narrows his eyes as he surveys the horizon from the watchtower. "Stay close to the grass line," he barks through a curled leaf megaphone, his voice firm but fatherly. The foragers salute with exaggerated seriousness, until one trips over his own spear and salutes the dirt. Antares sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose like a tired general. Then he sees it, a flicker of movement above, a shadow sweeping over the garden like a hawk's omen. His gut twists. Something's wrong, he mutters. A thunderous whoosh tears through the garden as the robin descends, a feathered warlord with a cocky strut even in flight. Snacks. It cackles in a deep, mocking human voice, wings slicing the air like blades. Ants scream and scatter, slipping on dew, colliding into each other. One soldier comically trying to negotiate by offering a pebble as tribute. Pip trips over a root, loses his crumb, and points upward in horror. "It's back!" he shrieks. The robin snatches two foragers in its beak like grapes and rockets skyward, laughing. Through the eyes of a fallen ant, the world becomes a nightmare of scale. The robin's beak descends slowly, like a falling gate of doom, dripping saliva that sizzles on hot pebbles. "But please," the ant stammers, holding up his broken spear like a toothpick. "I have a wife and 3 larvae." The robin pauses, tilts its head, and then sneers. Cute. With a snap, the beak lunges, only to miss as the ant rolls sideways, screaming, and accidentally headbutts a pebble, knocking himself out cold in a slapstick heap. "Regroup! To the Acorn Fortress!" Antares bellows, charging through the stampede like a war hero in a tiny epic. Ants crash into each other, shouting conflicting orders. "Left! No, right! I'm going home!" One soldier trips over a pebble and takes down 6 others like dominoes. Another argues with his buddy over who gets to carry the lucky pebble for protection. From the anthill balcony, Queen Antonia's voice rings out, regal and trembling. "Antares, do not let them take my children." Antares grits his teeth, eyes blazing. This ends now. Antares plants his boots on the splintered twig and points his sword at the circling shadow. "We are ants," he shouts, voice cracking with emotion, "but we are not prey." The soldiers gasp, some inspired, some sobbing, one vomiting from sheer nerves and blaming it on bad nectar. The robin dives again, and Antares doesn't flinch. He raises his sword higher, striking a dramatic hero pose, then immediately gets his cape stuck on a thorn bush and yanks it free with a cartoonish rip. Even in fear, the ants can't help but snort laughter. In the dim glow of the nursery, Queen Antonia kneels beside her young, her voice a whisper of heartbreak. How many more will I lose? She asks the silent chamber. Nurse ants bow their heads, one biting her lips so hard her antenna droops. A brave little larva reaches up and pats the Queen's hand with a clumsy, sticky grip. Outside, the robin's cry echoes like a cruel laugh. Antonia's tears fall onto the leaf blanket. Then she wipes them away with sudden steel in her gaze. No, we will not die hiding. The courtyard looks like a war zone, shrunk to insect scale. Medic ants rush with dewdrop salves, arguing over who gets the good bandages, a strip of soft flower petal. One soldier dramatically limps with both legs wrapped, insisting he's barely alive, until another points out he only scraped his knee. Antares surveys the damage, jaw tight, voice low. He can't outmuscle the sky, he admits. But maybe we can outthink it. The crowd falls silent, hope flickering like a tiny ember in the smoke. Inside the walnut war room, Antares slams his fist on the table, making bottle caps clatter like cymbals. "Listen up, you brilliant little maniacs," he growls. The engineers, wearing tiny goggles made from water droplets, unroll their plans with trembling hands. Pip points at the giant feather and shouts, "What if we fly?" The room erupts. Some gasp, some laugh nervously. One engineer faints dramatically onto a pile of rubber bands. Antares picks up the feather, turning it like a sacred relic. "Reverse engineer it," he commands. "If the bird owns the sky, we take it back." In the glow of firefly lanterns, the ant engineers treat the fallen feather like a sacred artifact. "Look at the curve," one whispers, tracing the vein with trembling fingers. "It's nature's perfect wing." Pip leans in too close and sneezes, launching berry ink splatters across the blueprints like a tiny explosion. Antares slams the table, then immediately winces at the noise. "Focus!" he shouts, pointing dramatically. "If we can copy this, the sky is no longer his." The room erupts in determined cheers, and one engineer faints again from excitement. A chaotic supply line storms through the miniature kingdom as ants haul junk like it's treasure. "Move it! Move it!" shouts a sergeant ant, waving a twig baton. One worker struggles with a comically oversized bottle cap, yelling, "I didn't sign up to be a pack mule, I'm an artist!" Another trips on a pebble and sends rubber bands flying like slingshot ammo, smacking 3 ants in the face. Despite the slapstick, their eyes burn with purpose. Every scrap brings them closer to flight. Antares steps into the moss hangar like a general inspecting a secret airbase. The first glider gleams in the shaft of sunlight, fragile, beautiful, and audacious. "It's gorgeous," Pip whispers, then immediately pokes the wing and yelps as Spider Silk snaps back and slaps him. Blacksmith ants hammer away at noodle rivets, sparks dancing like fireflies. Antares places a hand on the cockpit and nods solemnly. "Make it strong enough to survive the sky," he commands, "and make it fast enough to shame a bird." The pilot recruitment turns into pure chaos as ants bicker over headgear like it's a royal coronation. "I call the cool acorn helmet," Pip shouts, grabbing it dramatically. "No way," snaps another pilot, yanking it back. "I have better cheekbones." A third ant tries to wear 2 helmets at once and immediately topples over. Antares storms in, rubbing his temples. "You're flying machines, not modelling for a Beetle fashion show," he roars. The ants freeze, then quietly continue arguing in whispers, because pride is stronger than fear. At the edge of the garden, the ants construct their secret weapon, a slingshot catapult built from rubber bands, twigs, and desperation. "Tighter, tighter," an engineer screams as ants strain to pull the rubber bundles back with a system of pulleys made from thread spools. One soldier loses grip and gets flung sideways into a pile of sand, coughing and spitting like a cartoon. Antares watches from above, arms folded, trying to look calm, until a loose pebble ricochets off his helmet with a clang. "I said careful," he growls through gritted teeth.
Pip gulps as he buckles into the cockpit, the cool acorn helmet slightly too big, sliding down over his eyes. "I can do this," he mutters, voice shaking. "I'm the greatest forager in the—" The canopy latches with a snap, cutting him off. Below, ants chant his name like a war cry, then immediately start arguing about whether he'll survive. Pip grips the controls, sweat beading on his brow. "For the colony," he whispers. Right as the helmet slips down again and covers his entire face. "Launch!" Antares roars, and the catapult snaps forward like a vengeful spring. Pip's glider rockets off the ramp with a scream of wind and silk, sand exploding in every direction. For one glorious second, it soars, elegant, swift, a tiny miracle. The ants erupt in cheers, jumping and hugging, one engineer sobbing into a leaf handkerchief. "He's flying!" someone shouts. Antares allows himself the smallest smile, until the glider wobbles violently and starts spiraling like a drunken seed pod. Pip hurtles through the air, screaming so loudly his helmet vibrates. "I regret everything!" he wails, yanking the controls the wrong way. The glider loops, twirls, and smacks a dewdrop, which bursts like a water balloon and soaks him head to toe. Below, the ants watch in horror, then burst out laughing as Pip's acorn helmet flies off and bonks him on the head mid-spin. "Pilot down!" someone shouts, not helping at all. Pip groans, green-faced, clearly airsick. I see colours," he slurs. Pip collapses into the dirt like a fallen war hero, groaning, "Tell my larvae I loved the helmet." Medics fuss over him, one dramatically fanning him with a leaf while another argues that he wore it wrong. Immediately, the other pilots restart the helmet fight. "If I had worn it, I'd be soaring. No, I have the steadiest hands." Antares stomps over, pointing a thorned finger at them all. "Enough," he snaps. "You'll argue after you learn how to fly without vomiting on your own wings." The pilots salute, then immediately resume whisper fighting. Under the mossy beams of the hangar, Antares addresses his makeshift air force like a general before legend. "You are not just ants anymore," he declares, voice steady and proud. "You are pilots. You are the storm." The squadron salutes, some sharply, some swaying from lingering air sickness, one pilot accidentally saluting with a wrench. Queen Antonia watches from afar, hands clasped to her chest, eyes shining with hope and fear. Antares turns toward the launch ramp, jaw set. "Tomorrow," he says, "we take the sky from the tyrant." The pilots cheer, then immediately argue again over who gets to fly first. Dawn breaks over the Garden Kingdom as Commander Antares raises his thorn sword high, red petal cape snapping in the breeze. "Pilots, today we rewrite the sky," he bellows.
The squadron snaps to attention, some still bickering in whispers about the cool acorn helmet. Pip adjusts his oversized helmet with both hands, looking slightly green already. Engineers wave flags made from petal scraps, while the catapult crews grunt and strain like human artillery teams. With a unified shout, the first rubber band bundle releases. Gliders scream skyward in tight formation, pilots whooping and pumping tiny fists like fighter aces. "Stay tight! Watch your wingman!" Antares commands through a leaf megaphone, striking a heroic low-angle pose in his cockpit. Pip, helmet slipping over his eyes, yells back, "This is way better than foraging!" One pilot dramatically salutes mid-air, only to wobble dangerously. The squadron climbs above the garden canopy, tiny specks against the vast blue, hearts pounding with equal parts terror and pride as they approach the bird's domain. The robin explodes into view like a feathered tyrant, eyes blazing with arrogance. "More flying snacks," it roars in a deep, mocking voice. Pip's POV fills with the bird's diving form as he screams, "Contact! Contact!" Gliders scatter in chaotic dogfight patterns. Pilots shout conflicting orders, one dramatically posing with a needle sword before nearly colliding with his wingman. The garden below becomes a whirlwind of wings, dust clouds and tumbling debris as the aerial war erupts in full fury.
Mid-battle, two pilots turn green and begin arguing over the prized acorn helmet, while their gliders barrel roll uncontrollably.
"You said I could wear it this mission!"
one screams, reaching across open air.
"You're wasting it by puking everywhere!"
the other yells back, snatching the helmet and nearly falling out of his cockpit. Pip, equally airsick, shouts at them through the wind,
"Focus on the bird, you idiots!"
The robin laughs cruelly at the slapstick infighting, forcing the squadron to dodge both enemy attacks and their own comedic chaos. Antares glances over his shoulder and sees Pip's glider taking heavy damage. The young pilot pale and shouting, "I'm going to be sick again! Permission to retreat?" Antares grips his controls tighter, voice cracking with emotion. "Hold formation! We don't leave ants behind!" Below, gliders crash into grass blades like falling planes, sending up explosions of sand and debris. One pilot dramatically salutes as his wing snaps, yelling, "For the Queen!" before parachuting down on a petal scrap. The squadron is taking heavy losses. In a moment of pure heroism, Antares straps the discovered mirror shard to his glider and roars across the formation. "The bird fears its own face! Follow me!" Pip, still airsick, gives a weak thumbs up while arguing with his helmet one last time. Engineers had polished the shard into a psychological weapon. Antares banks hard, striking a dramatic pose against the sun, the mirror flashing like a beacon of hope. The squadron rallies despite their nausea and bruises, ready to turn the tide. The sky explodes into pure bedlam as ant gliders dive and weave, flashing the mirror in the robin's face at every pass. "Look at yourself, you tyrant!" Antares screams triumphantly. The bird catches its own reflection and freezes mid-wing beat, eyes widening in pure human-like terror. Pilots cheer and vomit simultaneously, still arguing about the helmet even as they score hits with needle darts and rubber band slings. One pilot dramatically poses on his damaged wing before sliding off comically. The garden trembles with the force of the battle. The robin locks eyes with its own reflection in the shard and lets out a high-pitched, undignified shriek. "No, not me, not that face!" It wails like a terrified human, wings flapping erratically in full panic.
Antares flies straight at it, holding the mirror steady with a heroic glare. The bird thrashes, knocking itself against its own nest in slapstick terror, sending eggs and twigs raining down like bombs. The squadron circles tighter, shouting taunts and trying not to laugh, while still feeling airsick. With the robin fleeing in a cloud of panicked feathers, the ants erupt in triumphant cheers. Pip removes his helmet, still slightly green, and hands it to a rival pilot with a begrudging but brotherly pat on the back. You earned it, this time. Antares raises his sword in victory as Queen Antonia watches from the acorn balcony, tears of joy in her eyes. The miniature kingdom below celebrates with tiny parades on rope bridges, while debris and dust slowly settle across the victorious garden. As sunset paints the garden in warm, ghibli hues, Antares plants the mirror shard like a banner of freedom atop the abandoned nest. The sky belongs to us now, he declares, voice full of pride. The pilots land clumsily, some still airsick, immediately resuming their helmet argument with laughter and playful shoving. Queen Antonia arrives, embracing her warriors, while larvae clap excitedly. Yet, in the far distance, a single feather drifts down ominously. Antares narrows his eyes, hinting at future threats. But for now, the colony stands tall. Tiny heroes who built an air force from trash and courage.